Thank you. I will now recognize Mr. Weber for 5 minutes.
I thank the gentlelady from Texas. Dr. Mikett, you mentioned that there's, quote, no better incentive force in the private sector, but if you really want energy innovation, you need to show the innovators there is a market waiting for them, end quote. Dr. Mikett, I ran an air conditioning company for 35 years, built it from the ground up. And I know that when the weather got hot, my business on the Gulf Coast of Texas was in great demand. I will tell you this, the more the Department of Energy raised energy ratings and required that manufacturers build higher efficient equipment, the more that those units cost, and the more the cost of air conditioning went up, the more the demand for that high efficient equipment went down, because people were already hard pressed living their lives and they couldn't afford higher prices. And on the Gulf Coast of Texas, you don't want to be without air conditioning. And I don't know how many of y'all live in the southern part of the country, but it's extremely important to us. Applying this same developing concept to clean energy technologies, Dr. Mikett, how do we show innovators that there is a demand and a market waiting for them?
Well, it depends on the area in which you're working, right?
Did I mention I live on the Gulf Coast of Texas?
Sure did, sir.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things government can do to create markets for innovation. A lot of them fall into other committees' jurisdiction, right? You can use tax policy, you can use incentive policies. I can't speak to the air conditioning example, largely because it's not my area of expertise, but I do know that we can look at cost-cutting measures. We can look at technological innovation to make more efficient air conditioners, as an example, less costly at the front. We can look at financing mechanisms that amortize maybe a more efficient air conditioner costs less to use over time. So how do you find ways to help people make an upfront capital investment, et cetera?
Okay, I'm going to move along a little bit. That's a great thought. Ranking Member Lucas said the push down from the top was the last thing we want to do because it would dramatically raise energy prices. And then there was some discussion between the witnesses with one of the members about raising those energy prices. Do we raise those energy prices to whatever it takes? I know, Dr. Kopp, you didn't have an exact price, but do we just commit to raising them to whatever it takes? Dr. Kopp?
Well, I'd say a number of the policy solutions you're talking about would raise the per unit energy price. But the idea behind trying to get the markets to work is that you wouldn't necessarily be raising the amount that people are spending on energy, because to take the air conditioning example that Dr. Mikett was talking about, right, cost a little bit more up front, just like solar costs a little bit more than a coal power plant up front. But you spend less over time.
Okay.
So a lot of these policies wouldn't necessarily increase total.
Let me move down. So Dr. Francis, whatever price it takes to get to that point, is that kind of the philosophy here? Does it matter if we raise energy prices?
I don't think it's fair to say that whatever cost it takes, but I think we need to have a strategic plan.
Would you put a percentage on that, raise them 10%, 20%, 15%?
This is not, energy policy
Okay.
and economics is not in my field of expertise.
Fair enough.
But I feel that putting a higher price on energy
Let me
will do what we want it to do.
Let me jump over to Dr. Eby. Any price, 10% more, 15% more?
The question is partially what's the price, but also how do you manage that? And is some of that price turned back?
Well, that's a growing technology, and we want America to be in the lead, American business and enterprise, right, to be in the lead for this. So, but I think there is a price where you make it so untenable for Americans that all of a sudden they kind of get turned off to the idea, and we don't want to do that. That's my point. Let me move on. Mr. Lucas said that in his state he's got lots of windmills, and I think you said you could see them from one horizon to the next. Have you ever noticed that on the hottest day of the year, the windmills aren't turning, and that's why it's the hottest day of the year? I mean, it's unbelievable that we can't rely on those. When it comes to national security, and you mentioned this, Dr. Kopp, actually in your comments, we're going to need a backup that our country can depend on, and it's going to have to be fossil fuel. I can tell you about requirements for energy. I'm working on nuclear energy capability. It needs to be at the table. It needs to be a major part of our portfolio. So we've got to take these things into account, and I appreciate y'all being here today, and I'm out of time.